I think we're going live, Dave. I'm here. Hey, Jeff Moody, MD, jeffmoody.com, jeffmoodymd.com, at Jeff Moody MD on Facebook. I always tell people I'm like a bad rash. I'm married to a dermatologist. I can get rid of myself if need be, but you can't get rid of me. I'm everywhere. Go to my website, sign up for the email. We got a course. We got my book. The Doctor is Burned Out, A Physician's Guide to Recovery there. But none of that matters because I have one of the best human beings in the universe on my show today. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to just not sugarcoat it. I'm so fortunate to have one of my best friends and a great guy, Dave Penson, who is the Paul V. Hamilton, MD, and Virginia E. Dowd Chair of Urologic Oncology and Professor of Urologic Surgery at Medicine at Vanderbilt University. He's the Director of the Center for Surgical Quality and Outcomes Research at Vanderbilt Institute of Medicine and Public Health. He maintains an active clinical practice at the Department of Urologic Surgery at the Vanderbilt Clinic and is a faculty appointment at the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center. Okay, thanks. That's all the time we have for today. So,
you could have just started by saying, yeah, he's mine and Kira's dad, and that would have been fine.
And that's awesome.
That's more work too. So
yeah, but we are thrilled to have Dave here. I thought I got a little bit burned out just reading your bio. I was a little bit concerned about that, but
I got a lot burned out getting all those titles. So
I was a little. Luckily, I got through it and I got past it. So. But I want to really, I want to focus on the most important thing first, which I think all of our listeners will want to know about. Who is your top fantasy pick at receiver this year, I guess? So.
Well, you got to like
all the urology stuff is important, but
forget about that.
It's like 97% of Dave's brain, and everything else is 3%. So.
Yeah, it's I mean, I can go through this. We can do a fantasy football show. We just need Steve Lerman, who's another mutual friend of yours and mine, here to counteract and tell you I don't know anything and I'm an idiot.
If you want, make sure you message Dave after the end of the show. I'm sure he'll give you his top picks. If you haven't done your drafts yet. So.
There you go.
All right. So really, I mean, Dave is the chair of urology at Vanderbilt University. And the main thing I really wanted to have him on today to talk about, to get serious here for a little bit, is I feel like in academia, in medicine, that is the ultimate pinnacle maybe of burnout, because they basically ask you to do 4 things. You have to be a superb researcher. You have to be a superb clinician. You have to be a superb teacher, and you actually have to have a life and have a family and be a real person outside of that. So I think it's almost impossible. I mean, I feel like I can only do 1 or 2 of those things very well. Dave does all of them amazingly well. And I wanted to know how he has dealt with that personally, and what kind of maybe the either departmental or maybe even institutional responses to prevention and or treatment of burnout at Vanderbilt are.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, it's funny you say that. I mean, I look at it and I see the challenges for academic physicians are identical to the challenge for any employed physician. That's really how I view it. And I think there is a fair amount of burnout in academia, but it's in that regard, it's just like if I was working for a Kaiser or any large Intermountain Health, any large organization. A little bit different than if you're in even a large group practice. Because I think for a lot of people who stay in academia, the research or the education piece is where they go to escape the burnout. The thing that gives people, why would you stay in academic medicine? I've always said, there are only really 3 things, and I won't curse because we're live, but, there's 4, either like doing big cases, you like teaching, you like doing research, or your ego just needs the stroke. And you can get a lot of that in community practice. So for a lot of people who are in, academia, the place they hide, for lack of a better way to put it, is in the research or in the education, because if they don't like it, they don't have to do it.
Right.
But when you put that part aside, and I don't think, people get frustrated in those domains, but I don't think they get burnout.
Right.
Then I'm kind of like any employed physician. So I'm not really that worried about the bottom line and keeping my lights on, and which I think really contributes to burnout. What I'm really concerned about is, okay, I have to make my targets. I have to do this so that my boss is happy. Um, and I have the same challenges that someone has in a smaller practice, with EMRs and all those pieces. But I also have the regulations of dealing with corporate medicine,
Right.
and so I think that there are some real there are some unique elements between being in a community practice with 20 or 30 or 5 people versus being in a academic or employed practice where you're part of 1,000 docs, or a multi-specialty clinic where you're 500 docs. And so the coping mechanisms, what are they? I don't know. I think the first thing that
Golf.
yeah, for golf. Well, but you see, that's actually important. Yes,
Yeah.
golf, band and dunes. No, I think it's important you have to prioritize things, right? And it's taken me a while to get to this point. As you know, you've known me a long time, and I'm a bit of a workaholic at times.
Dave is two things. A master of understatement, and B, I am so proud of him because we logged on and I'm like, what happened to you? And he said he's lost 40 pounds. I'm like, that is unbelievable and awesome. I'm so proud of him. That is like, I feel like you just extended your life expectancy by like 20 years. And so I'm thrilled. I'm kind of selfish because that means you get to be around me for another 20 years. But
Well, I'm not sure my wife is of the same mindset, no, but I mean, I think that that's part of it too. So, and we can talk a little bit about what Vanderbilt does to help with wellness, and we do an okay job. It's not perfect, but I think the first thing is taking care of your physical self, right? And and for a lot of people, that's booking time. I don't know how many people use Outlook. I'm tied to it. We all have our phones around, and everyone has their calendar on their phone, right? And so you have to book time. For me, to make sure I book time, I actually got a trainer. I never had
paying for it. Then you're like, I'm going because I'm paying.
Right. Well, there's someone else who's expecting me there, and but I think that that's the first thing is you have to take care of your physical plant, as it were. I had gotten chunky. I knew I'd gotten chunky and I didn't feel good. And when quarantine hit, I was like, look, one of two things going to happen. I'm either going to get even bigger because that's what most people are doing, or I'm going to be, I'm going to focus on something. And the nice thing is I think with the physical piece, that helps a lot. One of the things Vanderbilt does is they provide us with a reduced rate to go to the Vanderbilt Health and Wellness Center, where they have a big rec where the football team and the undergraduates work out. And I feel like, an old man when I go there. There's a downside to it in that it's not right in the middle of the hospital. We used to have, we used to use the same facilities, the physical therapy group in the hospital. That was great.
Like you could walk down the hallway and go work out.
I think, awesome. So one of the things, and I've told my faculty this, and, we actually have a wellness officer. We have a big wellness committee, but within the department, we have a wellness officer, someone, actually, Nicole Miller.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All these people who train with Jim Lingeman, very smart, right? And, and Nicole is a great person to do it because Nicole has 2 young kids and she gets work-life balance pretty well, which is really what burnout is. It's where you fall apart in work-life balance, right? So that helps a lot. She really will talk at faculty meetings, will work with people, and we've tried to sort of do things in that regard. But again, where I started was the physical plant is critical. You mentioned the golf. My wife tells me that golf is cheaper for me than therapy. I think she's right. Golf is not cheap, which tells you how screwy I am in the head, but you've known me long enough to know that. But you've got to take care of yourself, and you've got to do things that you really like to do. And I do think some of it's got to be physical. When I golf, I now at this point, I only walk. So, I'm walking 7-8 miles with a pack on my back in the heat. That's exercise. I'm concentrating. I feel good. I'm outside. If
you're concentrating on something that has nothing to do with work. I mean, it's
right.
It's something it's a different kind of problem solving. It's like a physical, mental problem. So it's a different challenge. which
And
I know you're all about challenges, you know.
Well, that's right. If as soon as I solve the puzzle, I got to move on. The irony is I play with other docs, and we don't talk much about work. When they want to screw up my golf game, one of them brings up work. It's like,
but then you're like, no, it's distracting.
No, I can't. It distracts me. And you get emotional. But you basically, I mean, that's part of it is like emotional unwinding. You know what I'm saying? You got to turn the volume down. And I think that if so that's a key piece. The other thing that, we've done and I've done personally, because I think this is really important, people don't take time off. It's the American way to some degree. Like, how hard can we work?
Yeah, exactly.
We were just talking before we went live about my kid brother. My kid brother just had, bypass surgery. All right. He's an investment banker. The guy works like a dog, and he's really successful. I mean, he's terrific, but I think that, and it's a stressful job. Yeah. And, he was always and has always been pretty good about taking time, but, they push him and they push us in medicine, how much more can you do? And as they lower our reimbursement, we all want to work harder because we want to continue to make salaries. Right. But in the end, you got to eventually say, you know what? I'm going to take a week vacation. I'm going to take a weekend off. And the key when you do that is to turn off your phone.
Yeah. Like off means off.
Yeah. And in fact, I snapped at a couple of my partners. I took a week in August with the family. We went up into the mountains. It was great. And I told everyone I'm going to be on
not
vacation.
Checking my email. I'm not.
Right.
I'm incommunicado. Yeah.
And they kept texting me and emailing me. And I finally got kind of snappy with one of them. And I'm like, I did tell you I was going on vacation, but that's really critical. And I've told all of them, you need to take time, particularly with the quarantine and the pandemic, which has made people even more on edge. And I think, we look at it as a sign of weakness in American society, and if you look at the Europeans, like they take the month of August off. And
somehow Europe tends to just survive. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
The sky doesn't fall and trains keep running.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So, and so those are, I think, a couple of things, and we're pretty good about it. And Vanderbilt has counseling services, but to be honest with you, I have to twist my partner's arms into using it because it's kind of seen as a sign of weakness. Well, and that's again, a mistake, right?
We can say this because, we're both surgeons and obviously we trained, at both the same place, but I was kind of I talk to people I trained in the pre-empathy era, of surgical training, it's like every night call. And then when you didn't have every night call, you were in permacall from home. It was just that was just the expectation. And you're 100 hours a week, 120 hours a week, no big deal. And again, I say this in my book, the last thing you want to be, perceived of is weak. That's a surgical, what, you can't take it, then, maybe you shouldn't be in this field. And I hope, and between what you're doing, what Nicole's doing, I hope we're kind of changing a little bit of that, god awful machismo. You can still be a great doctor and still work hard when you're there, but it doesn't mean you have to be there 120 hours a week.
Well, I think the other thing, and I think it's tougher for guys and gals in community practice because it's a little more eat what you kill. But one of the nice things about being an employed physician, being in an academic medical center, is so you have these set resources available to you, and you have these very set rules. And the problem becomes exactly what you said, is that the culture is such as we have it, but if you use it, you're weak. And I think what we're seeing now, and certainly as a leader, I try to be this way, is to turn around and say, listen, you know what? And I'll give you two examples. You're on maternity leave, take the full leave.
12 weeks
we'll
or whatever.
Cover your practice. And when you come back, we'll make accommodations. And men, take the paternity leave. My kids are adopted. I can remember when I came back, when my oldest came home, I think I've told you this story offline, and my boss, who was an old school, urologic surgeon, great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, calls me to do something. I've been home for like 2 days. I had like this out of body experience saying, listen, Paul, I just got home. I want to spend a week with my kid, and feeling guilty afterwards,
Yeah.
saying, well, actually, and he said, you're right. People need to be able to speak up for themselves. And we need leaders who respect that and who will encourage it. So I think that's a key point. And I think for people who are listening, who are in leadership roles, we gotta think like that. We're not doing ourselves any favors, and people are burning out. The other example I'll give you, and I'll be very discreet in this, is someone in my department had an anxiety issue, and basically was at the edge of
some negative consequences.
Just quitting. And so we made accommodations for that individual, let them go and get, basically they needed a partial inpatient program, and we did that for them. And it was like one of these things where I think that individual was nervous when people found out they were going to think less of that individual.
Right.
And I think it was the opposite. It was sort of this, are you okay? Listen, we got you back here. Go get well.
Yeah.
Because, you're part of the family. And
you're a valued member of this team, and like, we would never want you to cover that up and just try to hide from something when it's affecting you and your life and your family, all those things.
But, I think people are afraid to say anything. And, if you're on the verge of burnout or there and you don't say something, it's worse if you just quit and give up. I mean, rather than taking some time off and coming back recharged. And people forget that. When you talk about academia and employed physicians, if someone leaves, I mean, the cost.
We figure it's $1 million to hire somebody new.
Yeah. I mean, so it's so that's it. I mean, we have the same problems that you do with the EMR. I personally, I'm trying to make, lemonade out of lemons. I don't miss writing prescriptions, and I don't miss, writing notes. And there are things you can do, I think for that piece, because I think that's what drives a lot of people crazy is the EMR. We have scribes. They're great, now they've gotten dragged to the point where they can understand my thick accent. So that helps a lot, so, and I'd rather click than write, maybe I'm the exception to the rule, but I don't know. I mean, the EMR no one likes the EMR, but part of it is that it's a change and none of us wanted that. And change is hard, isn't it?
Like one thing, my least favorite aspect of EMR is that the interaction with the patient, unless you have a scribe. If you have a computer in the room, I think your interaction with the patient just went to hell in the handbasket. Like, you're looking at the computer instead of talking to the patient. So that's why we don't have computers in our rooms at all. We just walk in with a piece of paper. And like, we have labs, we bring the labs to discuss with the patient, and then we do everything outside of the room. So obviously it takes time outside the room, but I'd rather do that and be with the patient when I'm with the patient instead of, my wife has had some health stuff, as you know, and we were up at the university seeing the guy, and he looked at us for about 1 minute out of the 15 minutes we were in the room. He was typing on the computer the rest of the time. This is the chairman of the department. He's a great guy and he's a great doc. And I'm like, wow, like it's that hard to break that, connection, and it connects back with people,
I think part of it is because we have computers in the rooms and none of us use them. For that very reason, and some of my partners have trainees who come with, and I only, I have a resident, but I only see new patients with the residents, so that and what, for me, I look at it and they go, well, if I don't take the notes right there and then, I'm going to be here till all hours doing it. And my response to that is, well, maybe we need to see a few less patients so we can spend more time. I mean, part of it really boils down to, Jeff, is why'd you go into this, right? Talking before, talking about academia and saying, okay, well, why is it that the research and the education doesn't seem to burn people out as much? And I don't think it does. It's because it's in their happy place, right? Well, we went into medicine because a part of the actual clinical piece was in our happy place. And so we need to sort of get back to that. And I like talking to people. I like operating more. I'm like every other surgeon you've ever met, and you do too. Don't even tell me you don't. But the reality of it is that, you're right. The computer is like this wall. So I would rather just say, look, I'm going to see 2 less patients.
Yep.
And the other, and that's the other thing is people say, well, I got to keep my numbers up,
Yeah.
And why is that? Maybe they feel a pressure for volume. Maybe it's a sort of an ego thing. Maybe it's all about the Benjamins. But in the end, how much is enough? I mean,
that's what happened to me. Like like I got totally burned out, as you know, and had suicidal ideation and all this other craziness. But like the real core of it was me is I had to back up my ego bus because like I had to be the most productive partner. And finally I was like, why? I'm like, I'm taking Fridays off, and that was like, just like changing that paradigm that I could still be a good doctor, even if I wasn't the most productive partner, and I could still be a productive partner of our group, like that was all here. That was like a mental paradigm that had to change. So that was so true. So true.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of what, physicians are driven by many different things. And I hate to say it, some of it's ego,
Oh, yeah.
The Teddy Roosevelt line also, comparison is the thief of joy, which I love that line, because if you're basically, and you and I have some mutual friends who trained with us who that's what drove them, and they're still driven by that. If you're relying on someone else to be your stalking horse, so that way it's not going to work for you. I mean, why'd you do it? So I think, and I don't think it's hard to get there. I mean, you were just saying yourself, I mean, you don't have to get to burnout, suicidal ideation to get there. At a certain point, you were teasing me before about the titles. And I've always been an ambitious sort of guy. At this point, and maybe, just a little bit, but I think you reach a point in the end where you're looking and go, okay,
I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, I guess it's hard to do when you're early in your career, and maybe that's just wisdom when you realize it was all kind of BS, but the fact of the matter is that the sooner you identify what it is about the job that really, truly, it really makes you happy, that's real, and you focus on that, the easier it is to do the job. I mean, at this point, my practice is super specialized, and I love that because I'm really taking care of the diseases that I care about and I know something about, so I'm helping patients more. I think that's what you have to do. Now, let's not discuss administration because that's a different animal entirely. And I didn't realize what I was signing up for a lot of days. But at this point, I got to make it work for a few more years because my kids get a college benefit at Vanderbilt. But we're all good. That's a whole other story.
Okay, so we have people who are online with us and watching this live, Dave, and we have some questions from them. So one question from online was there a specific moment where you knew, Dr. Penson knew that you had to make a change? Where, like mine in my office was one day, like I had a whole day of notes that got evaporated by our EMR, and I took my keyboard and smashed it in half on my desk. I'm like, something's not right, when that's my response, to how things are going. So we call that the keyboard moment in my office. So did you have
You've always had more of a temper than I do, Jeff. I'm not known for my temper, although once or twice a year, I purposely lose my temper just so people are afraid of me from time to time, I can't really say I had this epiphany moment. Honestly, this has been something that, and it's still growing inside of me. It's just, as I've gotten older, I've started to realize there are things that I really like to do, which, I may not be able to do in 10 or 20 years, or at some point, I'm in my 50s, I'm not going to be here forever. And, you realize the more you do this, that, you got to focus on what's important to you, and I don't have a whole lot of regrets looking back, but I definitely wonder about, did I sacrifice some of my time, frankly, with my kids and my wife for work? And that's not a good thing. I don't want to, I don't want my kids to look back. I guess there was one moment when I was talking to my son about, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I won't forget this, for better or for worse. And I said something, and he just looked at me and he said, Dad, you just work too hard. And there was an F-bomb between too and hard in there. And so when your 14-year-old kid tells you work too effing hard, that tells you something, and so, but no, there was no epiphany for me.
Well, that sounds like a big moment though too, from somebody who obviously you really care about, and they're trying to tell you that like work is important, but they're important too.
Don't make me feel more guilty than I already
do. Okay. Dave, let's revisit that moment and really,
really stick it to him.
Really
but
oil it.
Yeah, but I think in the end, different people, you don't, all kidding aside, you don't want to get to the keyboard moment, right? Yeah. You don't want to get, I have a partner who, when we rolled out Epic, had a meltdown in the clinic, and I can't repeat what he said,
I know.
But we sort of had to take him off the line for a little while and sort of say, listen, you don't want to get to that moment. Yeah.
Well, and we have the same thing. I've seen people smash computer screens, in the hospital, throw soda cans through the wall, that kind of stuff. I mean, like, clearly it's not the soda can or the computer screen that's the problem. It's a lot of other things that just keep building up. And I think I love the way you approach it. It's like, take care of yourself, take care of your environment, and work on those things as they come up, instead of letting it get to be an 11, before you decide you're going to do something about it, or you blow up. So
yeah, I just, you got to know yourself, and I think a lot of people can see it coming, but they don't do anything about it because they don't want to make a scene. They don't want to.
They don't think it's that bad. No, it's not that bad. I'll just stay an extra hour every day doing, what my notes, when they could hire someone for $25,000 or $30,000 a year to do my notes for me. No, I'll just do it.
Well, the greatest line, or one of the greatest lines I ever heard, we were dealing with the coding folk, and this is one of the downsides, again, to working in an academic medical center in a large organization. There's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, and there was something with documentation. They said, listen, all you have to do is do the, add these words. It's going to take at most a minute per patient. We don't understand what the big does.
Times up 3,000 patients a year,
But if you have a 30-person clinic, and that's about the size of my clinic, and it's light compared to some of my partners.
Oh, and your visits are not like 5-minute visits. You're like a 30-minute visit, 20, 30
Well,
minutes.
if you talk to some of my patients, they'll say sometimes he is a 5-minute visit, and that's not good, but that's a whole other discussion. The best day, all kidding aside, the most fun I have in clinic is when I'm like, oh, it's kind of light today. I'm going to shoot the breeze with my patients. And, we talk golf, we talk sports, we talk about their kids, and to me, that makes me happy. And I think that's why a lot of folks went into medicine, but it's that people don't appreciate, and you feel this pressure from administrators, and sometimes you just got to push back and say, no, 1 minute is going to be an extra hour if I'm seeing 60 patients in clinic that day. And a lot of docs are doing 60 patients in clinic, an 8-hour a day. That's a pain in the butt,
And then times like how many days a week?
Well, that's right. Right. Exactly.
I'm like, oh my God, you just added like 1,000 hours of work to my career, with this, just do it one. And I love how it's always one more thing for us to do, just one more thing. I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I bill more efficiently for you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't help the patient, and it really doesn't really do anything for me.
Right. And it's interesting. I think the government is getting aware of it because, they're changing some of the documentation rules.
Decreasing.
But, the flip side is that now there'll be a decrease in reimbursement that goes with it. It's kind of a whack-a-mole game. But I think in the end, you just got to look and say, you got to stand up for yourself. I think that's, and sometimes you got to stand up for yourself against yourself, right? Where you got to say, look, like you were saying, I don't have to be the busiest guy here. I don't have to make the most money. I make a really good living. and I can still make a really good living if I just take it a little bit easier. And I know easier said than done. I totally get that. So,
and I'm like the guy, and like you, I'm a little bit of a workaholic. And the only way I could do it was to not be there, physically not be there.
Right,
so I'm like, I'm not going to be here on Friday, and I'm not going to add on the case to the guy who came in and something needs to be done sooner. I'm like, so I have 4 partners. I have 12 partners. I'm like, somebody else can do it.
Well, Don Skinner, who was the chair at USC and is one of the best known urologists in the world, the whole time I worked for him, and it was at the end of his career, Fridays, if there was a problem, you didn't call the boss because you knew where he was. He was playing golf. And, he basically said, I expect you're a young guy, you're going to help me out, take Fridays. And, but the thing is that, Skinner didn't do that his entire career, but he did it, certainly the second half. That allowed him to work until he was 70, and he was happy, I think when people start to look and say, okay, I'm going to take me time. And for most people, they do need to get the heck out of the office, and they do need to turn off their phone and their email. You come back, you're recharged.
Yeah. Well, and it's like somehow I always say that. So I heard this quote sign. I can't remember where I heard it from, but I'm like, you'll figure out how irreplaceable you are the day after you die. Because guess what? The day you die, all of that responsibility and all those tasks and everything else, they'll get farmed out to somebody else. So, like, I hate to put it that bluntly, but I think, it makes me think that, like, wow, like all this stuff that I think is so important maybe isn't as important as I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, listen, you've been in Colorado Springs your whole career. It's never a good move unless I move 1,000 miles, right? Okay, and I've always said, but this I realized that early on, because I used to say, when I left Seattle, no one's going to remember me even being here in 3 years. And I'm so important, and look at all I did. And the same at USC, and when I'm done at Vanderbilt, someone else will take my job. And 5 years later, no one's going to remember.
Like, oh yeah, I remember that Penson guy. He was pretty funny.
Yeah, right. He
great fantasy football picks.
Yeah. All he ever talked about was the Red Sox and his golf game. What's up with that guy? But I think you're right. No one's irreplaceable, and that's actually a good thing. You can look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as, screw you, you're trying to, screw me on reimbursement. I think if you look at it a little differently, which is, I'm not irreplaceable, so I can take some me time because that makes life easier,
Yep. Dave, all I got to say is thank you. I really appreciate the time. I want to be very respectful of your time. I hope the family's doing great. We'd love to see Ryan out here at the U.
I owe you a trip, Jeff.
You guys come out. So
I come when there's snow on the ground.
Oh, okay. Well, soon. Well, we had snow. We had snow. I don't know if you can see the rooftops, but we had snow.
No, I need snow in the mountains. You know where I'm driving with this.
All right.
Okay? If I'm not golfing, I do like to ski.
So anybody east of the Mississippi who's got prostate cancer should go see Dave. Just put a shout out for him at Vanderbilt. Great place, smart guys, best chairman in urology, I think, and I'm completely unbiased. JeffMoody.com, sign up for our email list, find my book, The Doctor's Burned Out, A Physician's Guide to Recovery. It's coming out September 29th. Dave's got a copy. Woohoo! It's right here. It's strategically placed on the bed. Sign up for our email list, sign up for these live streams, get on Facebook. The main thing really is I want people to get the services they need to get better from burnout. That's the bottom line. I'm trying to prevent the one physician per day in the United States who commits suicide. So come on, get up, get on it. Come see us. Go see Dave if you got issues. Come see me. We'll get you fixed. Okay. So thanks again. We'll catch you on the next live stream. David Penson, thank you very much. You are my Juan of urology. So
thanks
guys.